intrigued and brought up something and made sure that I created and made sure that something that I made something for you today. In many countries, particularly in underdeveloped and developing countries around the world, the powerhouse and the energy center for economic and social growth is, in fact, in our rural communities. Because there we find talent, there we find hard work, and without doubt, there lies potential. In 2015, when the Sustainable Development Goals were adopted, one phrase was made very vocal and very clear, and that was that no one is left behind. That includes the vulnerable, that includes those who live in the outskirts of our vibrant cities. You know what? In those places, there we find agriculture, we found our industrial developments, and most uniquely, we found culture. In our pursuit for these 17 goals and for them to be attained to maximum achievement in the year 2030, we in our different forums and capacity, whether it is NGOs or civil society or the private sector or the youth, we need to not only acknowledge but also give adequate platform and recognition to the diverse cultures in around our world. The hope and the light it inspires, despite the existing adversity in our community, brings a quality that is incomparable. If you go to Ghana, you will learn about the Ashanti Kingdom. If you go to South Africa, you learn about how government has assumed a role in recognizing the crucial and critical role that our traditional and faith leaders plays in building a holistically developing society. When we reach out to our cultural, traditional, faith, or community leaders, we're able to reach a market that we may not be able to conventionally meet through our normal means. And in doing so, we're able to establish accessibility and the lines of communication between intergovernmental organizations such as the United Nations and non-profit organizations and grassroots activists towards attaining social development and inclusion. When I looked up the phrase social inclusion, this is the definition I came up from the World Bank Group. It is a process of improving the terms on which individuals and groups take part in society, improving the ability, opportunity, and dignity of those disadvantaged on the basis of identity. I'll say that again. It is a process of improving the terms on which individuals and groups take part in society, improving opportunity, dignity, and ability of those disadvantaged on the basis of identity. I can attest to this with the work I currently do in South Africa. I'm originally from South Africa and have been living now in the United States for 6 months as a student. But however, 3 years back when I was a high school student, I founded a non-profit organization that focuses on female empowerment and youth development. Our motto is building a generation of impact-conscious female future leaders. We have done a number of projects around the world in our community and simultaneously collaborated with the South African government. This year, in 2019, our focus is on the disabled and challenged, as the disabled and challenged in rural communities. Our work is clearly outlined, which means we're working on getting mobility aids, hearing aids, cognitive aids, and assistive devices, that is through the use of computer software and technology. That's the work we're working on in 2019. Our biggest challenge is actually getting to these communities. I mean, it's easy to say, hey, you can go to a local disability center, but the most important thing is to ensure that we go to the cultural events that occur in our society. I'm being asked to wrap up. I'll go to our initial conversation with the organizers of this organization. We talked about Winnie Mandela, who is the wife of Nelson Mandela. And you will know that contrary to the stereotype, the question of today's topic would be that tradition doesn't necessarily promote inequality, as my co-guest speaker has mentioned. And if you mention culture addressing inequality and rural communities, that is a contradiction, that is an oxymoron. The answer to that is yes and no. Because our culture, if we look at it through a lens of appreciation of an individual and uniqueness, that's when we can achieve peace. Back to what I was saying, when we look at Nelson Mandela, she embodied cultural roots, as well as the fact that she was a fiery feminist. And that word did not exist when she was doing her work. While Nelson Mandela was away in prison in Robben Island, she was there doing the groundwork, mobilizing protests, being sent to prison and tortured and getting back to society and doing exactly what she was sent to prison for. This one woman with her kitten high heels and her afro was able to do what everyone was scared to do back in the 19th century. This woman knew her substance and her values, and regardless of that, she stood her ground. I will end with her phrase. She said that no power on earth can prevent an idea whose time has come. And if the time of a person who is in a rural community, whether that is a young person, whether it is a woman with talent and ability, whether it's a man who's trying to build a family for himself and his family, that should be given an equal opportunity in this time and day. Thank you very much.